Welcome back to the Manifest Your Success podcast, where we break down what it means to be successful, share the accomplishments, failures, and perspectives of individuals on entrepreneurship, business, and self-improvement. Today we are joined by Nessie Green.
It's Niecy.
Niecy Green. Okay, we are joined by...
I want you guys to call me by my real name.
Okay, what is that? Because tell me something I don't know.
All right, I know it's a secret.
Well, you're about to tell the whole podcast, so...
I feel it's time.
Okay, let's hear it.
My name is Shanice Darlene Stanley Cradle Green, but it could have been Owens because that is my biological father's name. So technically, I have lineage of about 4 different names.
Okay, so Charlize.
Shanice.
Okay.
Yes.
It's great to have you on the show, Shanice. You have been in the baking industry for over 20 years.
Yes.
Which we might get into today.
Okay.
And you've made it actually an appearance on the Oprah Winfrey Show.
I have.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was a guest on the show.
Okay, a guest. That's even better than an appearance. You weren't just in the crowd. You were actually a guest on the show.
Right next to Oprah.
Okay.
Yes.
She's a pretty powerful lady, I do have to say.
I thought she was.
Yeah, and you are an Olympian at life and an ambassador of the world.
Yes, those are my formal titles.
Okay, awesome. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Okay, so first, we actually got coffee and you kind of touched on how much you moved. And I guess speaking for me and Sam here, we haven't really experienced so much like as far as moving around in the world. Like we both grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I've traveled, but I haven't really like settled down anywhere else outside of Raleigh. So when you told me that you had a lot of travel experience growing up as a kid, I would love to dive deeper into that. So could you just like give a brief background of like where maybe you were born and like what your childhood was like and like moving, where did you move to and maybe some reasons that you moved?
Yeah, so it's simple. Everyone says it, right? IBM kid. I've been moved. IBM kids, you know? And so I was born in New Bern, North Carolina, and everywhere I lived 4 years. I left there and came to Raleigh, North Carolina. So I spent some time here. I actually went to Vina Wilburn Elementary School. Then we went to Bolingbrook, Illinois, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Then I came to Greensboro, North Carolina for college, 4 years there. I was supposed to leave and forgot. And honestly, what happened was I got addicted to the weather. And I could not imagine going back to the Midwest and moved to Durham, D.C. as I like to call it, Durham County, for a couple of years. And then something drew me to the capital. And I've been here for about 20 years because I'm 48. It seems like I've lived 1,000 lifetimes, though.
I think a lot of people like complain about the North Carolina weather because it's so bipolar. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I've never lived anywhere else, but I feel like if you go northern or southern, like it's too warm all the time or it's too cold all the time. Like we really do have the perfect mix here.
We do. It's 4 full seasons, right? And I worked in a call center once, and I remember saying, "Yep, we're in North Carolina," and they go, "God's country." And think about it. How many states can say that they have mountains and they have an ocean? And you can get there from Raleigh in like 4 hours.
And some farmlands full of tobacco.
Oh, man.
Can't forget those in the middle.
Yeah, so there was this song, and it was like, there's more than corn in Indiana at Indiana Beach. That was like a thing.
That's awesome. So you said you went to the Midwest before. You said you didn't want to go back. So what was your time in the Midwest like?
So I was there for 8 years total, 4 years in Bolingbrook, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. And literally there were like just sod farms there. And now they have an IKEA and we don't even have one. So that shows you just how progressive urban cities are, how they will reach out into the suburbs and they'll become urban as well. And so moving from, having access to the city to Indiana, it was a huge culture shock. But let me tell you how weird that is. Back then, in Ohio, the drinking age was 18. You could drink at 18. And when I moved there, I was always like really excited because I was like, yeah, 5 more years, I'm going to be able to go across the straight lines, get me a beer. And they changed it because so many kids were getting in accidents. So Ohio was like one of the last states to raise the legal limit age to 21. But these are things that I remember, like moving there and there was no Black radio station. And I'm like, wait, what year is it? And it was just so odd And yet it was the best place to grow up as a kid. I was able to really honestly like spread my wings because it was a very community and family centered, area. On Friday nights, everybody was at a football game. And I think now it just reminded me of New Bern, North Carolina, how in New Bern, everybody is at the football game on Friday. What I did not realize was when I was a little girl, I was always at the football game because I was a mascot with the cheerleaders. And only in my adult life, when I started like really connecting my happiness to my childhood, did I start to remember things that happened in my youth. So the fact that you guys actually want to talk about what my life was like, I actually remember.
That's awesome. I think it's so valuable too. Like I've spent some recently, I've kind of spent some time reflecting on like what my childhood was like, like how it does have like a huge influence on like your trajectory in life. Not that you can't change, not that something that's set in stone when you are a kid and it has this influence on you. It's not that you can't move away from an influence,
right.
But it really does have an effect on who you are as a person and like how fast you reach like your true self-actualization in life.
Ooh, yes. You're talking about, we had coffee and we were talking about my childhood. So, back to New Bern, my grandmother was one of the first nurses to integrate the hospital. So at home we had poverty and scarcity, but then she took me out to the hospital and I saw all these millionaires, literally doctors, right? And there was hope and possibility. And when I would walk through the hospital, and like literally I have spent the past 6 months trying to remember. And I thought really hard, like what was it like when I was a kid? Because I have 4 children. And one day the youngest was running through the house and he stopped and he goes, I love being a kid. And I was like winning as a mom. And I started to understand because I was behaving as a grandmother. So I started to think about how was life with my grandmother. So when we would walk through the hospital, it was like I was in a parade. That's Gloria's granddaughter. That's Miss Stanley's granddaughter. Everybody knew me. But one of the things that I realized was I had always been around affluent people to the point that my godfather, there's actually a school named after him in New Bern. And so Daddy feels like, I feel like Annie a little bit right now. That's what I called him. And now guys, they don't even name schools after people anymore. It's going to be Millbrook or Southeast Raleigh. But the old high school became a middle school and they named it Grover C. Middle School. And that man was my godfather. So when people ask me questions or ask other people, hey, does Shanice know all these famous people? I'm like, I've always known famous people. It was a part of my childhood. So for me, like I said, always being at a football game, being on the track, always performing in front of people, being in parades. This past week, I was a banner girl in the Martin Luther King parade, the 43rd MLK parade. And I was walking down Fayetteville Street thinking, I do love a parade.
Parades are quite fun.
They are. I've been in a lot of them.
I think something that we don't stress enough on the show is like surrounding yourself with people that are better than you or at your same level that push you further. And it sounds like you're doing exactly that, and you did exactly that, especially as a kid. Seeing as you've been on Oprah Winfrey's show as a guest.
Yes.
So I don't know anything really about Oprah Winfrey's show. I honestly haven't watched it that often. I know she has guests on. I've seen clips before. So what is like why does Oprah Winfrey do the show that she does? And like, how did you get a shot? How did you get the opportunity to be there on it as a guest?
Yeah. So this is literally what happened. I always loved television, and I don't know that people admit, right? I want to be on TV. Well, I was true to myself. I'm very self-aware. I wanted to be on TV. And I remember asking my grandmother, like, Mama, why do these sponsors? She said, that's where the money comes from. And when I was talking to a gentleman who was a master controller for WRL, he said, yeah, and he said, that's how we have free TV. So I was thinking, so let me get this straight. People just going to give you money to be on TV. This sounds interesting. And then one day, this black woman came on TV, and I thought, she ought to meet me. So I'm 12 years old. I'm a latchkey kid. And back then, Oprah would say, if you want to be on Wednesday show, call in. And so I decided to call in because there was finally a show that really resonated with who I was. And all I cared about was that I could get on the show. And most of the topics were not about me, you know. I mean, my marriage is failing, or I want to be a dentist, but I'm a hairdresser. You know, nothing that a 12-year-old kid could connect to. And so you don't know what this is. Have you ever heard a busy signal?
I have not.
Correct. I knew you did not know what that was. So all day long, I called and I called and I called, and I kept getting a busy signal. And then finally, around 3 o'clock, Oprah Winfrey, I said, hey, I want to be on Wednesday's show. And they said, well, tell us about yourself. I said, hold my non-alcoholic beer. And I started talking. Now, this is during a time, y'all, when they didn't have contracts, or, you know, you just do anything you wanted to in life. I talked to the producers for almost a week. And then they told me, you know what, we have a full panel, but if anyone drops out, we'll call you. And I was like, don't worry, you're going to call me. And sure enough, the day before the show was supposed to air, they were like, can you get here? You live in the suburbs, so we can't send a car. Now, me and my 12-year-old self, I didn't want my parents to take off of work. I had a very strong work ethic. And so I was like, yeah, I can get there. My parents know nothing. Now, you also never went in your parents' room in my day and age. So I remember standing in the doorway and thinking, this is going to be an earthquake. So they told me to stand in doorways and maybe I'll survive this question. I said, can I go on Oprah tomorrow? And they were like, Lord, my baby going on Oprah. Lord, my mom gets on the phone. She's like, I ain't coming to work tomorrow. My baby going on Oprah. It was like an episode from Everybody Hates Chris, I promise. And she was like, hold on 1 second. What you going on there for? And the whole time I'm thinking, why haven't they asked me why I was going on Oprah? And the problem with that was I was going for a serious reason. One, I knew I wanted to see what my future job was. But two, I had an eating disorder. And so I was going for overweight children. And you don't know you have an eating disorder. You have to eat, right? But even at 12, I knew that I had used food in times of crisis way too much. I knew that's why I was overweight. And I was very open with producers. And so we get to the Oprah Winfrey show. I don't know. I don't remember my mom ever signing any releases. It was just like weird because I just show up and I remember this man coming and powdering my face, and I'm waiting for Oprah to come and have this pre-show conversation with me. But you know what I remember the most was the food. They had the most beautiful food. And I was like, so let me get this straight. We are going to talk about overweight children, and then you want to feed me like this. And so I would say like 2 minutes before like it was time, because I'm looking at the time because we're live in Chicago. It was being recorded, kind of like this. Are we recording now?
We are recording right now.
I don't feel like we are, but anyway.
We got a lot of gear that tells us we're recording.
Right? I'm just going to go with it. And so Oprah came out finally, and there was no conversation. I thought she was going to get to know me like y'all, and she trusted whatever the producers had told her. So now as an adult, I'm thinking, they are disappointed with the way I behaved when I got on the show because I was myself when I was talking to the producers. But when I was on that stage and I knew that America was watching me, I was not my authentic self. I could not be honest about what I was dealing with, the trauma of leaving North Carolina and living in the Midwest. I couldn't be honest about I eat too much because I'm lonely and because I'm sad. And I really wish that I had been able to be honest either that day or at some point, because I, over time, would always use things to compensate my emotional state, except for when I was winning. And over time, I just realized that I had to learn to cope with failure differently. And in the past year, I actually lost 40 pounds.
That's awesome.
I did.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I think a lot of it was reflecting back on that time in my life. And my grandmother has a saying, it's pick, choose, and refuse. And I understood what was happening in my universe then. And I just started choosing to make different decisions about food and about exercise. And I was not allowing my circumstance to dictate my behavior. And I started winning at life again. And that's what an Olympian does. They're disciplined. They have a goal. And I've always been able to do it for everybody else. And my cousin, who was employee of the North American continent, I said, Chrissy, there's nobody better than you on the continent. She said, no, the world. And then she said, Shanice, listen, you've been doing it for everybody else. Start taking care of yourself. And so I did.
Yeah, I think obviously being your authentic self is something that's really important, but it's also harder than it seems.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any maybe advice for someone that is also struggling to be their authentic self? Like maybe how they could be more comfortable being their authentic self?
Yes. What happened to me was I fell in love with people. And if they were hurting, I would do everything that I could to serve them to be better about themselves. And one day I was having a conversation with the universe, and God literally asked me, well, do you ever think that I want you to be who I created you to be, and that it annoys me that you won't do it? So are you more concerned about their happiness or yours and mine? And when my grandmother was passing, I was her hospice nurse, and she had dementia, but she was very lucid with me. And she told me, she said, Shanice, be who God created you to be. And she just kept saying it. I have videos of her saying it. She said, you got away from us for a little while and we let you. And what I understood by that was she didn't try to stop me from being a people pleaser. That's human nature, because no one wants to see someone else hurting. However, she understood that I had the intelligence and that I was self-aware enough to ignore how people looked at me and thought about me, because she also knew that the things that I was going to do had a higher purpose. People can't begin to imagine your story. So if you live your life and you're a professional of your own universe, then you don't have to worry so much about someone being upset, because there'll be less people upset and there'll be more people happy. But at the end of the day, you will be happiest if you just take care of yourself. So how did then you deal with failures? Pick, choose, and refuse. You got to decide really quickly, and my little boy helped me with that. He's 8 years old, and he would throw these temper tantrums, real bad temper tantrums. I remember one time we were getting in the Uber, and he said, can I go back inside, Mom? I said, no, we have to get in this Uber. He took that book bag, and he slammed it on the ground, and I watched him. I chose not to let him drive my blood pressure up. His failure wasn't my failure. I'm a good mama. When he got in the car, I said, I've changed a lot, because I would have beat the mess out of your brothers and your sister. I said, but you, I'm just going to have a conversation with you. Again, I chose to know his behavior had nothing to do with me. A few days later, I hugged him, and I said, Shawnee, I really want you to work on your temper. He looked up at me. He said, I'll work on it. And then a few days after that, I said, you know, you've been doing a very good job. I was coaching him just like I would an employee. I don't get mad at my employees. I tell them when what they've done improperly, and then I congratulate them when they've changed their behavior. I decided, you know what? Do it for yourself, Shanice. Use your management skills on your own child. That baby looked at me, and he told me something that I didn't know. He said, I said, you know, Shawnee, why get mad at your mom, right? Because I'm thinking, I'm doing such a great job. I know you're not mad at me. And he looked at me and he said, Mommy, everybody gets mad. I just let it last 5 seconds. And so if you can recover quickly from other people's disappointment, because it will happen, right? What happens after you've recovered? You You can go do something amazing for yourself. You can encourage them to let go whatever it is that they're dealing with. And if they don't, then you understand something about that person. Perhaps maybe they don't belong in your universe. But in this world, we want it all, but you can't have it. And the last thing I'll say about that is just always remember, you're not too old for your wants to hurt you. And when I accepted that, and I thought about my grandmother, she said, this world will always have troubles. Think about if you believe in Jesus walking the earth, let's just say not religion, but that there was a perfect man and he was still persecuted, then you better believe your imperfect behind is going to be persecuted too. So what they going to do?
Yeah, that's great. I love that story, really, all of it, really. It reminds me of, I mentioned this book to you before, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it seems like from what I just heard, is like you kind of were living life in a way that you were worried so much about everyone else and like trying to bring other people up. But in that same time and moment, you weren't really looking at yourself, and you didn't take a time to sit back and look in a mirror and be like, okay, how can I fix myself before I can go out and fix other people?
Yeah. You know what the biggest thing for me was? I forgot what it was like to be a kid. I had to have some outlets, because if your mind is set on helping other people to feel better about themselves or allowing other people to exploit your gifts, then what happens when you do finally decide, I'm just going to, take care of myself? That's a lot of free time, right? So I started using my time more wisely and doing things like enjoying the arts, planning things that I enjoyed, serving. Because at that point, it was really hard for anybody to get me to do anything because I was actually busy. You had to get on my schedule.
You had a lot of excuses to give them, huh?
Well, you know what? I had a lot of purpose to tell them about.
That's a good point. That's a lot better way to say it.
Yes. I had purpose. In fact, I missed an appointment today. And I was very frustrated about it. But you know what I did? I told her the truth. I said, I'm so sorry I missed our appointment. I had to go to a meeting, and at the end of the meeting, I had an opportunity to tell the mayor about my vision. Well, who's going to be mad that I missed their appointment because I was talking to the mayor?
That's pretty good purpose and reason, I would say.
It was.
I'm curious, so it's kind of like going back to Oprah, and I think it kind of all falls in line because I think there's a lot of people that we can see now, especially in the digital age. Maybe not when you weren't growing up, but right now you can really see a lot of people that are being quote unquote successful, or you can hear a lot of perspectives of people and how they live. So after you were on that Oprah Winfrey show, did you look at Oprah as kind of like a role model? Or if it wasn't Oprah, did you have other role models in your life that kind of you looked up to as a kid and were like, okay, I want to be this person, or like I want to be some idea of this? Or how did you kind of work through that?
So I'm going to tell y'all the truth. I just forgave Oprah.
What did Oprah do to you?
So during the commercial breaks, it was silent unless we were talking amongst ourselves. And we came back from commercial once, and she said, well, during the commercial break, we were talking. And I was like, no, we were not talking. You had nothing to say to us. What are you talking? And I live in a tribe of truth, And so for years, I was very frustrated. But then I realized I was confused. I learned a lot from Oprah that day. I went there to learn. And it wasn't until, literally in the past 6 months, was I able to apply what she taught me. That woman didn't have time to talk to us because her voice is worth billions of dollars. And we were talking. She did tell the truth. You see, that's why I get a little bit concerned sometimes when I hear people talk about the banking industry, because when you write a credit memo, you have to tell the truth. Sort of.
It's got to seem like the truth.
Yeah, there are versions of the truth, right? So what she told was the truth, but this is what I've learned with my children. Too many children have been in trouble because no one took the time to understand their rationale. What I did not understand was Oprah's rationale. She was at work. I was there studying her. And what she taught me was time is money. And you have to value who you are at all times. That woman was at work. She was drinking her water to stay hydrated. I need some right now. She was listening to what we were saying. If she was able to say during the commercial break we were talking, then it meant that she heard what we were saying. And how many times have we heard the phrase, you have one mouth and two ears for a reason? She lived it. And when I started applying the things that she said, not what she said, I started applying what she did. I started listening to people again. Because as a banker, you have to write their credit memo. You have to get that information out of them to help them be better. And she was a very good listener. And I really now appreciate that she showed me what that looked like that day. I also owe you an apology, Oprah, because you then said to me, well, you are articulate. And I was mad at you by then, I think. And so I remember looking at you, Oprah, and saying, well, I don't mean to sound conceited, but I am smart. I did use a big word because I wanted her to know, yes, I am articulate. So, and sassy. I was extremely sassy. I still am. But it's so interesting to me that the perception is your reality until you choose to accept a positive reality. And when I started remembering, I don't have to look at everything as doom and gloom. And my cousin Chrissy, she said it to me one day. She said, Shanice, everything can work out too. That's always a possibility. And that's when I started really remembering, okay, if we didn't have much at home, but I went to the hospital and I saw that hope and possibility, what if I start living in that hope and possibility again? What if I just allow the universe and the process to be? And then cool things happen. Like I ended up on your podcast and I get to talk about talking to the mayor before I came to your podcast. I mean...
Yeah, it's quite the experience. Quick question, because I'm trying to do my best as listening as a podcast host. Would you like me to go get you some water? We can take a quick break.
Yes.
Okay, I'll do that.
You said a lot of things just now in that little stretch, and one thing I really wanted to touch on was kind of how you mentioned, you said how Oprah, you learned a lot from Oprah, and in that time you were there, and it took you a while to realize what exactly you had from that situation to learn, and I think that kind of applies to anything, right? If you really dig down into any situation, any experience, there's always something you can learn from it, but you have to choose if you want to say, hey, I'm going to take this experience and learn from it, or hey, I'm going to take this experience and always remember what I regretted or what I disliked about it.
Right. And when you are having a conversation with one of the most powerful women in the world, it takes a lot of arrogance to come away from it with an attitude. But I also had to have a lot of arrogance because I was in a male-dominated position from birth. I was the firstborn on both sides of my family, and I was a female. And I then worked in a lot of leadership positions as a young woman. I remember becoming captain of forget that. I was a first chair saxophonist in a 5A band. I was captain of my dance team as a junior. I was a top performer in the banking industry. And my arrogance did get in the way of my success a lot. But I did have to have a high level of confidence. And I have to say that in my older age, I've been able to share with younger people the difference between confidence and arrogance, because you can be very, very successful and not have an attitude. You can be very, very successful and not be quick-tempered, because we do it in certain environments. How many people get cussed out at church? Not on Sunday. So that means if you can behave that way in that environment, why can't you do it when you get home? My daughter, she helped me to see it can be done. She works for Chick-fil-A, and she said, Mommy, if I'm nice to everybody at Chick-fil-A, then certainly I can be nice to my family. But she had to pick, choose, and refuse to do that. And we had to reciprocate. Like I said, when Shawnee was throwing that temper tantrum, I had to make a conscious decision to remember this is a single moment in time. And so my arrogance has really started to take a back seat to my appreciation for relationships with people. Because the same way in which I'm sitting here talking to you, all polite and, I have my smile on, I take this same temperament into my home with my children, and I try to mirror this when I talk to other people. I was very nice when I talked to the mayor today. But are there times that I just turn all the way up? Sure, I do. Absolutely. It's just not as often. I never saw my grandmother lose her cool. I literally had never seen her lose her temper. So it is something that, for me, it's about being self-aware of other people's position in life. I don't know everything that you're going through. And being in control of myself and not full of myself. It's two different things.
Right. That's a great point. And I think being true to yourself, I think a lot of people try to find themselves in career and life. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the banking industry a little bit. So I'm interested to see what kind of motivated you to get into that. You said you went to school in Greensboro, correct?
Yes.
So
Aggie Pride. You have to say that.
me and Sam are still yet to graduate college. And I feel like, we were talking at the break, like every day really is a choice, and like even your childhood is just as important as your days in college, and your days after college are just as important as your days in college. So it's kind of like this whole cycle of you got to make the right decisions. So what kind of motivated you to jump in the banking industry, and how did you manage to stay in it for 20 years?
You're going to have to turn the cameras off of this.
Okay.
Man, I'm just kidding. I did not believe that I was going to school in North Carolina. I had gifts. I was a dancer. I was a singer. I was an actress. My parents told me if I got a scholarship, I could get a car. I was getting a convertible because I was going to art school in Florida. Of course I was, because I was getting a scholarship there. And I remember being told, I want a ROI, which is ironic. That's such a banking term, right? And I didn't know what that was. And later in life, I realized, I was like, oh, this is almost like I was an investment property. And a lot of times parents have expectations of who and how children should become who they want them to be. And as a result, I was told I had to go to an HBCU, and I still to this day don't understand why I was black. And I'm glad that I went because it was a part of my process. But I remember looking for all the majors that only had 1 year of math. And English only had 1 year of math. And then I graduated and ended up being a banker. That's a lot of math. But I never looked at it as math as much as I looked at it as comprehension of word problems. Everything, I had to just figure out the solution. And they had calculators for the math stuff, or I could ask my banker to do it. I was a manager and a salesperson. So I got to really go in the lobby and perform all day long. And I did it for 20 years because I could serve people. So it was kind of a dream job. Remember, I told you I had to stop looking at it as I was in a prison, because that's what I used to say. Can you imagine this personality being trapped in a suit and pearls? I wasn't trapped. I was learning things. The universe had allowed a little black girl like me to go into rooms that many of us are not even invited or welcome. And they allowed me to learn. I was learning again. I learned for 20 years. There's a saying, if you go to school, you'll make some money. If you have life experiences, you'll be rich. I had a lot of life experiences. That's why I'm an Olympian at life. So I survived 20 years in banking because I had outlets. One of them was I was a cheerleading coach for 10 years at Chavis Heights. Another outlet, I was a tour guide for Taste Carolina Gourmet Food Tours. I'm actually on TripAdvisor. I have reviews. I didn't know I was playing all by myself, but I was smart. I was also making money. I was meeting people. And then I could take all of that, the wisdom, the networks, the resources, and I could go help my clients, and then they would bring me more clients. And before I knew it, I was really doing well. And our industry really started that way. When we started moving into mass production of households and selling checking accounts without giving any form of knowledge, when I didn't have the ability to explain to someone why they bounced a check because I had to show them how to balance their statement because that part didn't matter. We were going to just send them to the online banking and they were going to use this portal to figure it out. I started to understand, our society doesn't understand that we have a whole comprehension gap. We can't learn because we don't learn this way in my culture. In a lot of cultures. And so I became very frustrated and I felt like I was lying to my community. And I felt my moral compass being challenged every single day. And I did not love what I did anymore. So I retired in July. I didn't quit. That's how I had to tell myself. Because I don't quit. I decided this doesn't work for me. I had a choice. I could pick, choose, and refuse if I wanted to do it. And I chose to stop. It was my decision. And then I met a woman recently at the MLK March. She said, Nisa, you're not going to be as successful as you were in your 20s. But if you take the wisdom and the knowledge that you have and apply it to this phase of your life, you'll have a greater second half. And I was like, right. I'm not going to have President's Circle winner awards anymore. But now I'm winning at life again because I'm helping people. It's so important to give of yourself because when you do, you can be blessed with more. And it happens to me all the time.
Yeah, I think one thing that I remember you mentioned when we first met you was you were very good at your banking job. I guess you're clearly very humble, so you didn't mention that you did win multiple awards, I think you said. But I think so you kind of had like multiple things going on. You were on TripAdvisor, you were doing the coaching. So maybe what were different skills or lessons or values that you were able to pick up and apply to like certain areas of your life, like the banking job that really allowed you to excel and be one of the best at your job?
So I don't know if we were recording when I said this. Character, being able to make a decision if this is a good fit for your universe, right? I was really, really good at that in banking because if I gave someone a loan and it went bad, then it would jeopardize my whole livelihood. So one of the things that I did really well in my professional career was understanding who to align myself with in terms of, okay, this person knows a lot of people. This is a business owner who has a lot of relationships, and I may be able to help his network or her network. Applying the gift of asking good questions, we call it profiling in the bank, but so does the FBI. And so when you take the time to get to know people, then you really start to understand how you can align and work together. I did it so well in my professional career. I was horrible at it by the time I got home. And so a lot of times I had horrible personal relationships because I was tired of asking questions. I didn't want to, and I'd just be like, you want to be my friend? Because I refer to all my ex-boyfriends as Bobby Brown. Every single one of them has some trait that reminds me of Bobby Brown. Now, except my ex-husband. He was good as gold, but we weren't, if he's my ex-husband, we were not very compatible. You know what his Bobby Brown trait was? I used to love when Bobby Brown sang the song Girl Next Door. You've probably never heard it, have you? Yeah, Bobby Brown has a song called Girl Next Door. That's the only trait that he had like Bobby Brown. I was his neighbor.
That's pretty fascinating.
I think I looked at it as a sign. I was like, dude, I'm totally supposed to marry you because I'm the girl next door, you know. But I do want to touch about love for a second.
Please.
We nobody talks about it.
I think love. People think of love and they think of like relationships, but I think it's more than just relationships.
It is.
Yeah. But please go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, you love who you love. You're gonna do that. But there comes a time when you'll have to decide if you're going to keep loving. You know, my grandmother, she was so hilarious. I remember one day she told me, she said, I never thought I'd be married to your grandfather this long. I thought I'd get me another husband and kick him around, see what he was like, and get me another one. I was like, what? She made it very clear to me. She said, people don't court. I said, Mama, what's court? She said, it's the stage before dating. And so growing up, I always had several suitors. I was the prize. They were the contestants is what she told me. And then society started telling me that I was wrong for that. And so I started dating one person at a time, and then you have to wait to see if it's going to work out. And it was not really for me. And that's why I'm very careful when I am seeing someone and they want to date other people. I can be very fluid. And now your generation seems to be more comfortable. Culturally, I do believe that white people date and court much better than black people. Like, there's an entry in my journal. I was in 8th grade, and I had a friend, and she and her boyfriend had broken up, and I'd moved into this area. She was my friend, and her ex-boyfriend liked me, so we started dating. And her mother sent word to me, you tell Shanice you don't date your friend's ex-boyfriend. And I wrote in my journal, and I don't understand the reasoning. Because, again, you love who you love, and maybe someone did date that person. I'm okay with that. You know, if anybody was trying to date someone that I dated, I'd be happy for them in some regard. So I had a hard time accepting my values about love and society's values about love. And so when I accepted that I was going to love who I was going to love, I had to then accept that I can only be in a situation as long as it serves me well. And if you do that, you might find that you have more love because you can move on to a better love. But if you just gonna sit there and stay in a love situation and call it love when you're not feeling loved, then it's just your fault that you feel the way you feel, because you could pick, choose, and refuse to be mistreated.
That's a great point. And I kind of want to double click into that whole idea of love, and kind of more carry it into not a relationship, love for a person, but kind of love for what you're doing in life. So how do you think if someone's going through life and they're like, okay, I don't know what I love, then what is someone supposed to do when they really have no idea what they love in life, and they're like, okay, everything I'm doing, I kind of don't feel like I'm finding meaning out of this. Mm-hmm. Like, what would you say to someone? Like, is it supposed to try new things? Are they supposed to ask for help? Or what would you say to someone that can't really find things they like, they love in their life?
A lot of times we're copycats. You know, you have to see it sometimes to believe it. And so connection to people really will allow you to start investigating. So instead of you trying, what did I say earlier? Ask questions, talk to people. We don't do it enough. We look at these podcasts, but what happens when you meet somebody in the hallway and you say, do you want to come talk to us? Because you will have an experience through that person. So imagine when people say, learn from my mistakes. What if I learn from your success? That's what I do. That's
awesome.
why I'm here. I want a podcast. So I'm here looking at y'all. I'm learning, studying you. I'm trying to figure out if you're going to help me.
We're trying to figure out the same thing. So I know you have somewhere to be shortly. It is 5:40. So I'm going to wrap up here. We have a couple last questions for you.
I'm ready.
This is a question that we do ask every guest on our show.
Okay.
So the pressure is through the roof. So you better give a good answer. No, jokes. So we ask everyone, what is one goal that you have in life? It could be something that's tangible, like a target you want to reach. It could be something that you want to achieve every day you wake up. It could be in your career life. It could be in your personal life. But what is one goal that you have, and what are the steps that you're doing to achieve that goal?
I set a lot of goals because I'm in so many different ecosystems and I wear so many different hats. I mean, when Shaka Khan was singing I'm Every Woman, I took that junk seriously. So one of my goals is to curb my language and allow my voice to vibrate more positivity. Energy is never gained or lost. It is only transferred. And I have a very, very high vibration. Right now, my 8-year-old is keeping tabs on how many times I swear. I recently looked up what it means to curse. And it literally was devastating to understand that it is to invoke harm on someone, basically just through your words. And if I truly want to elevate to the next level, the way in which I see things has to align with how I speak too. Because you cannot have a loud voice and use it anyway. You have to be respectful of that because it is a gift. And I don't want to lose that gift. So one of the things that I've been working on is ensuring that my communication with people and even the way in which I speak into myself is more positive. Now, does that mean I'm never going to use a swear word again? No, I'm not. I'm going to use them. But I look at how I use my words. I owe Shawnee $675 right now.
Oh my gosh.
And so the way that I am working on that goal is I speak more affirmations over myself. I speak more positivity into people more often. That's how I became a banner girl at the MLK walk. I saw these ladies outside of the coffee shop, and I said, was on the phone. I said, hold on. I flagged them down. I went outside. I said, people have told me that I am a light, and I saw you ladies, and you look beautiful. And I just wanted to tell you, good morning, and I hope that, you have a great day. And she said, well, of course, this is a light. It's the Congresswoman, Deborah Ross. I was like, I could feel it. So if I could see the light, that means I should also be speaking light. And so one of my goals is to live a life of more positive vibrations, even through the sound of my voice.
I think that's a really powerful goal. And it's nice to hear you bring up vibrations and conservation of energy, because that's kind of what I study in school, and it all seems so meaningless all the time.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I could feel it. But imagine, energy is never gained or lost, only transferred. I mean, we didn't even get to talk about the Hawk story.
We didn't. You'll have to come back on.
I
as long as you keep giving us these positive vibes, you're welcome anytime. You've done a great job this episode for sure.
Thank
and
you.
this show.
Thank you.
I think one last thing we usually do is just we kind of ask our guests if they have any handoffs for the audience, and this could be books, people, the Oprah Winfrey Show, things like that. Anything you think that the audience could really benefit from?
Yes, I do have a handoff. Are you ready? I want the audience to try to move one hand forward and one hand backwards. Almost got it.
Okay, yeah, that's a hard task right there. You're trying to move one way. For anyone that wasn't watching that, you have to move one hand away from you and move one hand towards you. But your brains won't let you do it because the two hemispheres of your brain are connected. If your hemisphere of your brain isn't connected, then you'll be able to do it.
I had a
So that's a test to see
whole
if you're
bar
sane.
trying to do it last night. And what was amazing was one of the men said, I'm going to do this with my kids. And even when I saw people walking away, they were still trying it. All because you had told me about this. You shared your light and your energy with me, and now it's all over Raleigh.
I'm looking forward to seeing someone down the street trying to do it with their kids as I'm walking around Raleigh. Well, thank you so much for being here.